Okay, next up, we're going to need to find some routes to manage all user posts and ratings. So let's actually create a file for that, like so. We'll touch a routes posts.js file, and it's there, great. Then we'll go ahead and create two new files for our models as well. So we'll touch a models/post.js and models rating.js. I like to keep those singular, mainly because that's kind of convention, and then the routes are plural. Let's actually start with the routes, since that's usually the best place to start. And we'll do the same thing we've done for pretty much any route. Actually, let's just copy this right here, just so we have the exact same structures before. And let's kind of go over what the general route structure is. The first thing we do is we import Express, and we create a new router from express.router. Then we take that router and we define a bunch of endpoints on it. We give them the HTTP method, the endpoint, and the route handler. Now, the reason why we're surrounding these route handlers and try-catch blocks is in case anything goes wrong here, we'll take that error and we'll just pass it along to the next middleware with the next error, the next function, which again, we're going to go into in a little more detail later on. But we have a few things we want to happen here in our application. We want users to be able to create posts, list all posts, fetch a single post by ID, update a single post by ID, or create a rating for a post. And so to do that, we're going to need a few routes. I'm actually going to define them here. And let's start with the one that's the easiest to think about, which is just create a new post. All right, nothing fancy here. Just a simple post request to the /endpoint. Now, I'm just going to copy paste this 5 times, and we're going to edit each one to represent what we actually want it to do. We're going to have a get request to list all posts. We're going to have another get request, but it's going to fetch a single post by ID. So fetch single post. And then we also want to update a single post. Oh, it's not called update, it's called post ID. And we want to update a post. And we also want to create a rating for a post. So let's put that at post ratings. And we'll just say create a rating for a post. Now, by the way, just to be super clear, this is not the only way to structure routes with this post ID /ratings and using put requests here. There's a bunch of ways to handle building REST APIs. And we could have even actually potentially built an entirely different router for rating related requests. So don't feel boxed in by this approach. It just represents a single mindset tactic, at least, to building RESTful APIs. But building these route skeletons is actually usually good practice, so at least we know what is the functionality we want to build into our API for posts. And then it makes it a lot easier to go in and build the models for that afterwards. We're actually going to start, though, with the rating model, because it's going to be a little bit smaller. And all we need to do for the rating model is import the DB, and then create a class called rating. And I'm just going to export it at the beginning. Oh, did I forget to export those routes? No, I didn't. Right there. It's because I copy paste. Usually when I copy paste stuff, I forget exactly what I did in there. So good to remember. And then inside this rating class, we're going to first be able to create a rating for posts. That's kind of clunky sounding, but you know what? I'm going to go with it for now. I like to make my names long and descriptive usually, so at least I know what I'm doing. The other thing I like to do is to outline my thinking inside the actual function itself. So I'm going to outline exactly what it is that I want to happen here, which is I'm going to check if a user has already added a rating for this post and throw an error if they have. Otherwise, insert the record into the DB. Now, to be able to ensure whether or not a user has added a rating for this post, we need to be able to fetch that rating for a user. So let's call that, well, first of all, we know what it's going to do. It's going to fetch a user's rating for a post if one exists. So all we'll need is the user and the ID of the post. And let's call this one fetch rating for post by user. Another really long descriptive name, but that's fine. At least I know exactly what this is trying to do. So let's actually go ahead and copy this, because I think that's all we need for here, and go into the post model. and create a post class. Now, this one I think in general will probably just mirror the rest of the routes. And so we had 5, maybe 4 routes that were post specific. I'm just going to list the ones I know. List posts, which I don't think will need any parameters, and it'll just list all posts in DB in descending order of when they were created, something like that. And then we will also want to fetch post by ID, which will only need a post ID. Fetch a single post. We also want to be able to create a new post, right? Create post. Let's call it create new post, maybe. That sounds nicer. And that will need the new post and the user. And create a new post. And then the last one we'll need is, let's call this edit post. And it will need the post ID and whatever updates we want to make to the post. Edit a single post. Now again, these just kind of pair up exactly with the routes, and that's totally fine, because at least we know exactly what they're doing, and that's usually the best way for me to think about architecting Express APIs like this. Now, the one thing that's kind of funky here is that this create new post is expecting a user, and actually I think in the ratings, both of these are expecting a user. But at the moment, we don't actually have a mechanism by which to ensure which user is making a request to our API. You know, we could ask them, but they could lie. Or maybe we could have them send their email and password in every request, but pretty much no one would ever want to use our application if that's how they had to use it. We need some way of securely identifying a user every single time they send a request. And so in the next video, that's exactly what we're going to do. But first, let's tidy up with some Git. Git status, git add, git commit, added skeletons for routes and models. Great. So we are good to go.